Andy, there's nothing like, having these type of conversations that we know with 100% certainty. How can I say this, man? It really helps entrepreneurs that are out there, right? And let me just take a moment, Andy, and just say, hello, what's going on, my brother? How are you?
What is going on, Chamber? What's going on, man? It's been a while, and I've been looking forward to this conversation, man.
I agree, man. I can't wait till we sit down and break bread and be face to face. But right now, through the power of these fiber optic lines, we're breaking bread right now. Without the plane ticket, right? Without the plane ticket.
That's it, man.
But let me just be serious for a moment, because this is going to be a serious conversation. Because, Andy, there's speakers and authors and entrepreneurs and business owners and professionals who every day either have a business, and their biggest challenge is, how do they scale to that next level, right? They're running Facebook ads right now. They're doing master classes right now. They're putting money in there, and they need the business to get to a whole nother level. And then there's another group of entrepreneurs, Andy, who really are still struggling, I'll say, to really fill their programs or sell their products or just get their message out. And then, Andy, and I know I'm coming to you in a minute, there's another group over here. And they're not on the sidelines. They're our dualpreneurs. They're in the game, right? They're using their message. They're using their words to sell their thoughts, to sell their ideas, to sell their beliefs, to sell their team, and their message or their signature selling style will help them. But I want to kick it over to you, my brother, if I can, for a moment, for you to step back and take a moment to see what are some of the challenges you're seeing with folks out there as it relates to their story and message. And then I'll talk about some challenges they face in terms of really building their sales team.
Yeah, man. Well, it's interesting. I was listening to you talk about the three different segments that people are in. And I love how we're always in sync, Shay, because in my company, we identify those three stages that people could be in right now as they're listening. They're either at what we refer to as that growth stage. In other words, they are an entrepreneur who's generating revenue and they're wanting to up level their game. Like they're trying to scale their business. They want to make greater impact. They want to make more income, but they are in fact already a full-time entrepreneur. And then there's that person who we like to refer to as in that transition stage. Maybe they're working a 9 to 5 and they're feeling this calling on their heart. They're feeling called to become a speaker, to become a coach, to become an entrepreneur. And maybe they've even dibbled and dabbled in it, but they don't quite have that clarity and that confidence to take a shot and to go fully after it. And then there's that person that's in the middle that you were talking about, Shay, and we refer to that person as being in the level up stage. They might have a side business or what some people refer to as a side hustle, but they want to go full time or they want to up level it. But the issue is they're not generating enough leads and they're not converting enough leads. And, regardless of where an individual may fall as you're listening into this, really, Shay, what I find is that there's one thing that's really, truly essential. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we face today is that people undervalue and underestimate the importance of their message. And for the sake of our conversation right now, every time I say message, what I'm really talking about is their story, right? That I think people have this tendency where they really, truly sort of put things in reverse. And this is what I mean by that. And Shay, maybe perhaps you could relate to that because I know I've been there and maybe perhaps you've been there before. And that is like, you and I over the years, we've been like really, really intentional about making sure that we do a lot of personal development. And, we have had the opportunity to be that aspiring entrepreneur, to be that person looking to grow and scale their business, and also to have been in the early stages and know some of the frustrations that happen there. And I think that where a lot of people sort of mess up a little bit and where there tends to be a challenge is they put the cart in front of the horse. And allow me to explain when I talk about this. What I mean by that is that we have all these people that spend all this time, Shay, they go and they write the book because somebody told them, hey, it'd be great to write a book. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But they don't realize that the average author sells less than 250 copies of their book. Or they say, oh my gosh, I got to create my online course or create a product or a service. And they go and they create this product or a service. And then they realize like, whoa, wait a second, this notion of if you build it, they would come, it's not exactly what I thought it was. And so unfortunately, they're not generating enough leads. And on the back end, and it's something that you help them with so much, Shay, is they're not converting those leads. Or they heard about the importance of having, a fancy funnel and so forth. And so they go spend this time building this online funnel and so forth. But this is what I mean about putting the cart in front of the horse. All of those things are great. Like, it's great. You got a book, that's great. You've got a podcast, that's great. Like, you created an online course, that's great. You've got products and services, that's great. You're deciding to build a funnel, that's great. But what they end up discovering, and it tends to be a bit late in the game, is that the thing that moves traffic towards all of those things so that you can even set yourself up to even be able to hire someone like, Shay Brown and his amazing, easy sales team, right? The thing that even sets that person up is that we've got to have a message on the front end that drives people to your products, that drives people to your books, that drives people through the funnel. And that message is essentially what we refer to as your story. And so one of the things that, and I think this would be such a great time to give them a visual, Shay, because I think they need to see this. The issue is we got way too many people who are putting the cart in front of the horse. In other words, they're spending all this time trying to develop products and services and write the book and create fancy funnels and run Facebook ads and social. But what they fail to realize is that the thing that is going to drive people through to their books, to their products, to their services, drive people through the funnel and finally get them to that sales conversation is going to be their story. And so what we've got to do is we've got to pump the brakes for a moment and stop just being super busy and spinning our wheels and trying to figure out how do we add another module to our program, or what's the next book we're going to write, or what's the fancy funnel we're going to create. And we got to stop for a moment and start thinking about, okay, what's my message here? What is the story that I'm going to leverage so that I could get the attention of my ideal customer and client, that is going to speak to their pain point, that is going to speak towards their aspirations, that's even going to get their attention so that they even are interested in my products and my services and my books and so forth, so that I could eventually even make it to a sales conversation. And let's face it, Shay Brown, you know this better than anybody. At the end of the day, there is absolutely no business if there are no sales. And the reality of it is there are no sales if your messaging is not strong enough to even get people's attention, to get them to understand why they should even be interested in your products or your services. And I think that Shay Brown, I think, man, this is one of those things that if everyone just stopped for a moment and thought about it for a moment, that it would so help people from just being busy and not producing the results that they wanted. If they just paused for a moment and said, wait a second, you know what? I have spent a lot of time trying to do the products and the services and everything, but I haven't really spent time clarifying my message. And when I say message, you know what I mean, Shay Brown. I'm talking about putting together that powerful magnetic story that is going to attract our ideal customer and client to the things that we have to offer them.
You know, Andy, as you was talking, one of the things that popped into my mind, and I think this is so important, is that a number of folks that are out there that are listening to you right now, you know what, Andy, you're mentioning stories, you're mentioning messages, but is there only one way to tell the story? Obviously, the answer is no. Is there only one style? Obviously, the answer is no. But if they were asked the question right now, Andy, as they're listening, what is the type of stories they need or types of messages they need, they may not be able to answer the question with clarity in this very precise moment. And this is very important, and I'll take a minute or two as I'm sharing it, and folks are joining on now as we're sharing it out, and kind of walk what I mean by that, okay? Because this is very important. And one thing I'm going to ask Andy, for you that's listening right now, for you that's watching right now, you may want to hit the share button. Like however you found this link, take it and share it forward, because Andy is going to be walking through what are the signature story types. Like, what type of stories are needed that are critical to the message? And then one or two ideas that you could probably use immediately is going to help you. And then on the other side, we'll be looking at the sales side. Now, Andy and I have been in the lab, right? And so we've created something called your signature selling style. And Andy's right. Some folks, they need the message. They need to make sure they know that. But Andy, on the other side, in about 2 minutes, I've found and learned as I'm talking to folks and been doing this for a number of years that a number of individuals were taught how to sell like somebody else. And that became frustrating for them because as they're teaching how to sell like someone else, how to sell like their coach, how to sound like a woman, or how to sell like a man, or how to sell like something they've read, they never learned how to sell like themselves. And what I've learned is people don't mind selling. They really don't mind. I know you hate selling, okay? We'll get to that later. But one of the things they hate is they want to learn, how do I sound and sell like myself? Jot this in your notes. This is very, very important. Put this in your notes. Scripts are for actors, and you, my friend, you're not an actor. Put that in your notes. Scripts are for actors, and you are not an actor. So wouldn't you want during this time to learn how to sell like you? Wouldn't you want to know how to have a message that you need that resonates with your story, that helps you connect with individuals, that can drive your marketing, that can drive your branding, that can drive all the activity you're doing on social media? Like, Andy's going to release, I hope, at least a couple of different styles, and any one of them can create a breakthrough for you. And then what I want to be able to do is say, okay, as you're sharing that same message can be used as well on the other side for your sales team. And if that team is you right now, like you are the head salesperson, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I know you didn't sign up for that job, but I'll say this and put this in your notes. Selling is the oxygen to any great business in history. Just put that in your notes. Selling is the oxygen to any great business in business. So at some point, you need some cash flow to stay in business. Andy, I want to toss back over you, man. I just wanted to share that because the same struggle that you're seeing on the messaging side, we're seeing that folks say, well, how do I sell like myself? And how do I sell in harmony with my messaging, with my stories? So we're all in harmony. Over to you, my man.
Absolutely, man. And so you brought this up. And so for those of you that are joining us, this is just a conversation here. And in this conversation, we're going to be dropping some nuggets. And so I hope you got a pen, hope you got a piece of paper, something to write with, because this is a conversation that Shay and I have offline. And we're like, well, why don't we have this conversation online and see if we could create some value for people? And so one of the things that by now, unless you've been hiding under a rock someplace, you've heard about the importance of sharing and telling stories. And so we know that stories are important and stories are powerful. The thing is that most entrepreneurs have no idea what stories to tell, and they don't even understand the purpose of the stories. And the entrepreneurs that are really going to accelerate and create the biggest results are the ones that are, number one, recognize the fact that they should tell stories, but number two, know what stories to tell. And that number three, they know how to tell them so that they can capture people's attention, connect with them emotionally, and then ultimately convert them. So there's essentially, at the end of the day, 5 stories that every entrepreneur needs to tell. I'm going to say that one more time. There are 5 stories that every entrepreneur needs to be able to tell. And during this discussion that we're going to have, we'll spend a little more time on some of those stories than others. But if you were to ask me up front right now, you'll say, okay, Andy, I'm all ears right now. And I need to know if I am going to start working on and crafting my message or crafting my story, what would you say is the story that I need to kick off and start off with? And the story that I believe that every entrepreneur needs to kick off with is the story that we refer to as a signature story, a signature story. And if you're a note taker, I want you to write this down. One of our friends used to always say that note takers are money makers. And so if you're a note taker, I want you to write this down. It's a signature story. Now, the signature story, I want you to think about this for a moment. You are looking to connect with your customer or with your client. For most of us, our ideal customer and client, especially if you are a coach, your ideal customer and client is typically somebody who is on the same trail as you, but they're earlier on in the process. And one of the best ways for you to be able to connect with them and get their attention is to share your story about a time that you were exactly where they are right now in their story, right? So at a time that you were exactly where they're at, where maybe perhaps you were struggling, you were experiencing some challenges, whatever that thing may be, and then how you overcame that struggle, how you overcame that challenge to get to where you are today. And so one of the things that we fail to realize is that for our ideal customer and client, typically our personal story of a time where we were where our client is right now, when we were experiencing the same pain points, when we were experiencing the same challenges, and then sharing the story about how we overcame those challenges and were able to produce some new results, leads our ideal client to say, oh my gosh, what's the solution here? That story is what we refer to as a signature story. It is nothing more than a story that you share so that you can get your ideal customer and client to feel a genuine connection with you and come to the realization that just maybe perhaps, that they could actually benefit from your products and your services. And Shay, man, hands down, we know this, especially for people who are listening in right now, who are, let's say, coaches. We think about just about every single coach, your ideal customer and client is someone who's earlier in the process as you. And if all you did was share a story about when you were experiencing similar pain points, similar struggles, and then how you overcame those struggles, that story would allow you to make a meaningful connection with the person who is your ideal customer and client. And that is just the power, Shay, of that signature story. It's just a story that you're using that is a personal story that allows you to connect with the kind of people that you want to actually connect with. What you would refer to, Shay, as qualified candidates, qualified leads, right? Individuals that are in alignment with our products and our services and the things that we have to offer.
You know, Andy, you're spot on with that, and I love how you talked about making sure they start off with their signature story. To make sure they relate to where they are. I know you have a couple of different that are there for you that's at home right now, for you that's watching right now. Let me tell you why this is very, very important. I want you for a moment, and I've had the pleasure of not only working with Andy, but working with folks who work with Andy, right? And if you were asked a question, let's say we were all in this $25,000 mastermind and we were all down in Fort Lauderdale right now, which I'll be at next month, by the way. And we asked the question, what are the type of signature stories that you've already have in your storybook that you share to help capture and connect and ultimately close with clients? And if your answer is, I know what it is, but I don't have it written down. If your answer is, I wing it, I kind of decide where they are and I shoot from the hip, then I would probably suggest to you that you're not being as powerful and maybe as persuasive. Now, you're still good. Don't get me wrong. I know some of you, you're a rock star. Some of you in the top 1% of the folks on the planet. And you can do that. It lands every time. This is not for you. But there's others of us, I'm in that 99% of folks who can't do that consistently and get predictable results. Now, I just want you to imagine for a moment. Imagine for a moment, if you can. And yeah, we'll get into signature selling styles in a moment. But imagine that you're on trial, right? And if you don't win this case and your attorney is arguing the closing arguments, and if he does not convince this jury, you could be executed. I know that's far extreme, but just imagine that something horrible has happened. And your attorney shows up and tells you, don't worry. I'm going to go in there and I'm best off the top of my head. And because I've been doing this for a long time, I can feel what's going on in the room, and I can pull stories that are going to be very relevant that's going to help you. Now, I know this is silly, and you might be laughing, but think about what you would tell that person. You would say, no, I would like to at least understand how you plan on connecting with that jury. I like to understand how you're going to persuade them with our case, with the facts, whatever it may be. And isn't business the same way? When you have an idea, when you have a belief, when you have something deep down and you know you can serve someone, don't you want to communicate as powerfully, as persuasively, be authentic at the end of the day, and be yourself? Everyone jot this down. Knows, and this is one of the things I love about what Andy does. And there's 3 things, Andy, that on the sales side that our clients ask for that you do so well. And Andy's going to get to the next one. Don't worry about that. You talked about story. But 3 things, and Andy does is, put this in your notes. I want you to be authentic, be natural, and be transparent. Let me say that again, because Andy does that better than anyone else I know on the planet. And everything that he's teaching you, I like it. There's none of these slick, persuasive, convince them, influence them, make them do something they don't want to do because you told them a story. No. I want you to hear this. Hear this. As Andy goes through this, we'll have a gut check. At the end of the day, when you're telling your story, you can be authentic. Andy sounds like you can still do that. You can be natural, and Andy teaches those techniques. And you can be transparent. And in doing that, you can communicate your message. I'll come back to signature selling styles. I want Andy to get through a couple of the signature story styles. But he talked about the first one is your origin story. And if you're listening right now and you're like, I got like 25 different origin stories. Okay. If you had to mention the top 2 or 3 that connects most with your client, what would they be? And if they're not written down and they're not thought out and there's not an outline that you can follow, then put it in your notes to make sure you connect with Andy. Shay, what's the number 1 reason I should do that? Put this in your notes. What gets measured gets managed. Put that in your notes. Andy, I've been sharing this as we've been teaching folks how to have a sales dashboard right now, and we're teaching them how to make sure they do the things they need to do. What gets measured gets managed. So worst case scenario, you connect with Andy, you put 2 or 3 story origins together, and you come back to Andy and say, Andy, my base has evolved. There's something else. Can you pull another story? He can teach you the techniques. Andy, continue on with the signature story styles. You gave us number 1 we need, which is the origin story.
Yeah, man. And, there's a couple of things I want to share right now, because you brought a couple of things up. When we talk about this signature story, one of the things I love to do is when I bring something up is for you to sort of reflect in your own personal database to just test it, right? I know whenever someone shares something with me, I like going through my own personal experiences to test it. Shay was talking about, being authentic, being natural and still being able to connect with people. And I remember for me as an entrepreneur, when I was trying to start really creating some traction and elevating my brand, I started looking around at the people that I felt were pretty good influencers. And in my case, I was aspiring to become a speaker and a coach. So I started looking at who are the people that really had influence and were getting a lot of traction. And one of the things that I noticed about all of them is that they had this signature story, which was like a story that they shared over and over and over again to be able to connect with their ideal customer and client, create a true, authentic connection, and that they would eventually leverage that to then be able to move people further down the process of being a part of their tribe, their community, and then ultimately be able to make offers to their products and the services and the things they have to offer. And so, Shay, I would love to just put some of those people that I noticed up front on screen right now. And so what I noticed was I started looking around and I started saying, like, wait a second here. I had an opportunity to study under Les Brown. And over the years, I heard Les Brown share the same story about being born in Miami, Florida, in an abandoned building, being labeled educably mentally retarded. These are in his words, basically, struggling in school, being labeled the dumb twin, and eventually becoming a sanitation worker and then a disc jockey. And we know the legendary Les Brown, you got to be hungry. And then I remember hearing Tony Robbins multiple times talking about growing up in an abusive household and how his mom used to wash his mouth out with soap. And he had this amazing mentor eventually by the name of Jim Rohn. And then I would hear Lisa Nichols talk about going to an ATM machine to go get diapers for her son and not having enough money to even be able to withdraw the money to buy the diapers for her son. And then I would hear Eric Thomas talk about being a high school dropout And then I would hear Joe Osteen talk about being the cameraman and have no intention on being the pastor until his father passed away and they asked him to. And I said, wait a second here. All of these individuals that I've listened to over the years, I have not only heard them share their story once, but I have heard them share their stories over and over and over and over again. Now, here's one thing that I've come to realize is that success leaves clues. And so I challenge you as you're listening to us right now to think about who's been a major influencer in your life. Maybe it wasn't one of the people that we put up on the screen. Maybe it was one of the people we put up on the screen. And I want you to look for yourself through your own personal, like mental Rolodex. And I want you to think about, have you heard this person tell their story? And then I want you to think about, have you possibly heard them share their story more than once? And what I want you to realize is that that story was part of what they leveraged to be able to make a genuine connection with you. And that story is what they've leveraged to be able to make a connection with their audience. And these are just some of the individuals that I've been able to hear their stories over the years and watch how they leverage those stories. And what I want you to realize as you're listening in is that you do, in fact, have one of those stories. Now, I don't have the time right here at this moment to go into a deep dive on how you can find that story. But one thing I could tell you is that every single one of us does, in fact, have a signature story, what Shay referred to as an origin story. And I want you to realize this, is that there's basically 3 places that you can look to be able to find that story. I don't have the time because I want us to spend some time on some of the other things. But if you want to know how to locate your signature story, I've got a free training that I want you to take advantage of. Super, super simple. It's going to be a video where I'm going to teach you exactly the same 3-part framework that I've used to help companies like Office Depot, Bacardi, Pratt & Whitney, NASA, Google, to be able to help their top executives to find their story. It's the same story that I've helped entrepreneurs, speakers, and coaches to be able to find their signature story so that they can attract more of their ideal customer and clients, and many of which have been able to significantly increase their level of influence and then also be able to increase their revenue. And basically, it's what I refer to as my story finder method. So I want you to take advantage of this free training. All you have to do is you can head over there, just open up a separate browser. You're going to go to storyfindermethod.com, storyfindermethod.com. This is all spelled out perfectly, okay? Storyfindermethod.com. And once you get there, you're going to see it's going to say, where do you want me to send you access to the Story Finder method? You're going to put in your information real quickly, your name, your email address, and then it's going to take you directly there. I want you to stay with us during our time together, but then afterwards you could go watch that training. It's about a 15-minute training, and it's going to help you, regardless if you're that person that think, oh my gosh, Andy, I got a lot of stories, and I'm not quite sure which one is my signature story, or you're that person who says, I don't even think I have a story. This is going to help you to be able to identify what that signature story is for you. So Shay, if you could throw that up for me real quickly too on the screen and make it real easy for them. Storyfindermethod.com. And now make it really easy for you.
Storyfindermethod.com. Is that right?
Yeah, storyfindermethod.com. And I've got one of the slides there, Shay.
I'm looking for it. I'm looking for it now.
Yeah, perfect.
But I don't see it in here, my man.
Okay, it's interesting. Maybe I'm not doing a screen share. I thought I was.
No, you're not doing a screen share. But I'm searching for it now inside of what you have or what I have in front of me, and maybe.
Okay, look for a lot of blue. Look for a lot of blue and white.
Okay.
But it should be there.
If you give me
right
the number, I'm looking. And I don't see choosing the right size, signature story. Look for a lot of blue, value proposition. Okay. I will have the team keep looking for it, but I'm looking for it as well. And miraculously, it ends at slide 28.
Either way, you guys, we'll get it up on the screen for you eventually, but it's storyfindermethod.com. Storyfindermethod.com. And it makes it really easy for you to be able to take advantage of it. So that is the signature story we're talking about. And what I just shared with you was a free resource so that you could be able to locate and find that signature story of yours so that we make it easy for you, even if you are that person who is under the belief, like you are under the belief that, you know what, I don't even know if I have, you might be one of those individuals, you might be saying to yourself, I don't even know if I have a signature story. Now that's going to really help you to be able to pinpoint and find what that story is. Now, the other thing I wanted to share with you is this, and Shay was bringing this up, which she was saying, well, what are some of the other stories we need? We know we need this signature story because that's going to help us to build the initial connection with people. And why is that so important? Because we know that people love to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. How they get to know you, how they get to like you, how they get to trust you. They're going to get to know, like, and trust you through your story. However, what we're hoping is that the story is then going to help you to be able to generate some leads, to be able to get some attention, to get some prospects. And when you do have an opportunity to get in front of those prospects, we want you to be able to convert. We want you to be able to get those prospects to take action. And when we want to get prospects to take action, we know that there's typically only so many reasons why they don't take action. And so we can leverage a type of story that helps us to be able to increase our conversion rate, to get more people who should say yes. So we're not talking about convincing people who shouldn't work with us or convincing people who shouldn't be our clients. We're talking about specifically about getting those who should be your clients to say yes. And how do we do that? We leverage what is known as an offer story. Now, I want to make it clear to you what an offer story does. What an offer story does is very simple. Offer story number one helps people to see the value of your products and your services. We know that one of the reasons why people don't say yes to your products and services is because we have failed in one capacity or another to get them to see the value, right? So we want them to see the value of our products and our services. And part of the way that we do that is to share a story that gets them to understand fully how they're going to benefit by purchasing our products or purchasing our services. This is one of those things that's really, really important and is absolutely critical, is leveraging stories to get people to see the value of our products and services so that we can make it easy for them to be able to make a decision. Now, the other thing about an offer story is that an offer story helps you to overcome the objections. We know that when people are going to buy, that they're going to have some potential objections. And I want you to think about right now, when you have your own products and services, what are some of the objections? Maybe they're like, oh, well, I don't know if I have the time. I don't know if I have the money. Is this really going to work, right? So an offer story is a story that you share that by leveraging and sharing the story, you are tackling the objections within the story so that you can increase the probability that people are going to say yes to your product or your service. And then the final portion of the offer story is that it creates some sense of urgency so that people can actually make a decision. You know, Shay, you are, in my opinion, one of the masters in the area of sales. Mm-hmm. And I know that your company is so great at really being able to set people up so that they can really get a grip around the sales tools that they need, also to be able to get a grip around the sales process, and then also making sure that they have the right sales people. And so, Shay, I know that you know firsthand when we talk about this, about just the importance of making sure that they're leveraging stories in that process. But Shay, do you mind just sort of sharing just for you guys? I mean, this is the story that I believe that, you know, for the entrepreneur who's involved in the sales conversation themselves, this is a story that they have to use. But I know that you help so many entrepreneurs who are really stressed out by the sales process, and they are at the point now where they can't really manage all those sales calls and so forth on their own. And I'm just curious, what are some of the things that you and your company are doing to really help people in that process? And I know that when they're a part of the conversation, themselves, one of the things I'm always advocating is that they make sure that they're using an offer story, which is a story that they're going to leverage to be able to increase their sales.
Absolutely, Andy. And one of the things that's really key that Andy's mentioning here is the offer story. Andy, one of the questions we get asked most is, how do you, quote unquote, close the deal? And I always tell folks, it's never about the close. The best way to have a strong close is to have a great opening. The best way to have a great opening is to have a story that's embedded into that opening. Why is that? Because stories act as invisible selling. Stories move people emotionally. And Andy, what we've seen the struggle on the other side of that, after they've learned their signature stories, after they've learned their messaging, is on the other side as well. Shay, how do I track all these leads that I have coming in? And for many of them, it takes what we call a sales dashboard, right? There's some type of sales tool that have to go behind that, right? For those folks that are going to take your story that you're going to leverage from Andy, he's going to give, I think, 5 during this time. He's already given your origin story. He's now talking about the offer story. And you're going to take that and you're going to bundle that into maybe your marketing. That might be your Facebook ads. It might be the stories you're embedding inside of your Facebook Live. Some of you do master classes. Some of you are doing live events. For some of you, you're taking these stories and embed them inside of a book. And people are contacting you and you're like moving them forward with the offer story. And the biggest challenge is, who do I talk to first? Who's the best use of my time? And where are they in my sales cycle? And I'm talking about if they're hot. If they're hot, you know who they are. They're in your phone, right? Like you wake up in the morning and you got to follow up with that person. But then there's other people who might be what we call the slow cookers. And these are folks you've got to nurture. There's another group of folks that might be right in the mid area. You might be saying, Shay, why you mention that? You're going to get to the signature selling styles? Yeah, I'll mention 2 real quick. But the reason I mentioned that sales tools for a sales dashboard are so important is this one reason. We know that as of today, I don't know about tomorrow, but as of today, that we know that 97% of people who are introduced to your website the first time or to you don't buy the first time. So the question becomes, what happens to the other 3? That becomes the question. What happens to the other 3%? Right? The other 3% may buy, but the other 97% doesn't. And so what is the nurture campaigns and processes we have for the other 97 who today might not be ready, but over the course of hearing your story, different type of stories, get more connected, and when they're ready to make a buying decision, you're the choice. And that falls to step number 2. So Andy talked about, okay, Shay, you got sales tools. Why is that important? Jot this in your notes. What gets measured gets managed. And so if you can't measure the number of leads, qualified leads, appointments that are run, opportunities that are available, and the different stages they're in, then it's really hard to manage it. You can do it in your head, but that's getting you results you are right now. And some of you are doing really, really well, so you don't need this. And others like, I never thought about a sales dashboard that I can look at my phone and see what's going on. Yeah, because we believe that every day is a vacation day when you're hitting your sales goals. If not, then let's talk. Number 2 is around the sales process. And I just want to break this down because everything Andy's talking about feeds into the sales process. Jot this in your notes. We believe in the evergreen revenue model. It's one of the things that we're innovators of. It's one of the things that we support. It's one of the things that we push. And the evergreen revenue model in English means that you do something one time and your labor is no longer involved. So when I got started, and this is not when I first got started, this is like 5 years ago, and I was always running a project and then launching another campaign and then doing it again and then saying the same thing again and then saying the same thing again and then saying the same thing again. And it wasn't that I didn't know about funnels. It wasn't that I didn't know about software. It wasn't that I didn't know about different things to do. Is that I had never slowed down. Jot this in your notes. You got to slow down to speed up. And so you think about your evergreen revenue model. How do you do something one time? Your labor is no longer involved. And what is your methodology? I believe all of us should have methodologies that we're able to use. And then the last one, obviously, Andy, as you mentioned, is having a sales team that can just make the sales. Because like I'm going to teach you your signature selling styles. But one of the things I like to share wherever I go is that if you don't want to sell, even if you love selling, but if you don't want to do it all day long, the best thing you can do is hire someone who does. Let me say that again. If you don't want to sell, the best thing you can do is hire someone that does, because selling is the option to any great business in history, and all activities in sales in business lead to a professional sales presentation. Everything you do. So if you're out there like, Shay, that sounds good. I just want to connect. I want to get it. I want the playbook. I don't have time to get into it now. I'm going to come back to Andy in about a minute because we're going to get into the next part. And you've got to have your story. You've got to have your message. You've got to have your origin part. This is important. But if you're like, Shay, I just want to generate some revenue. I'm listening to you, Shay. This sounds good. You're walking down my street. I'm smelling what you're cooking in the kitchen. Whatever you want to say right now, whatever it is, if that's you as you're listening and you're like, I'm all in, do me a favor. You can text the word playbook because we put together a playbook. It's the Evergreen Revenue Playbook. And it's only for folks who are looking to generate more revenue in their business that will allow them to purchase the resources that are necessary to execute the vision that you have for yourself. You got a vision of how you want to live, a vision for the food that you want to eat, a vision for your loved ones, the kids you want to send to college, the communities you want to write a check for, the causes you believe in, or a vision for the people you were called to serve. Like as a business owner, you're not able to do all the things that you were called to do, that you were gifted to do because you're lacking revenue. You can do this. Text the word playbook. Text the word playbook to 202-270-1662. Now, look, when you text the word playbook to 202-270-1662, you're going to get our Evergreen Revenue Playbook. Now, it's a video series that I've done that really gives you the 7 proven simple strategies to really to skyrocket your revenue without your labor. I want to take all the stories you're getting from Andy. I want to take all the stories, and I want you to be able to package those and then use those to serve. I close with this, Andy. I'm coming back over to you because I know I can't wait to get to the next one. Because without stories, they can't do any of this, by the way. Put this in your notes. Selling equals service. Selling is service. And as long as you're willing to sell, as long as you're willing to do that, then you can serve. And when you serve, you will have more meaning in the world, which means you'll have more impact in the world. When you have more impact in the world, you have more income in the world. And if my good friend Delatorre McNeil was here, he would say you can make $1 and the difference at the same time. And if that's you and you want to take your stories and repackage them and make $1 the difference at the same time, I'm going to turn it back over to Andy to kind of talk about maybe 2 more signature stories that you can use. He talked about the origin story. He's already talked about the offer story. And now, what's next? You may be like, I don't know, Shay. I thought that was it. No, it isn't. And that's why Andy's here. Andy, over to you, my friend.
Shay, my man, that's what I'm talking about. And Shay, I sent you a text message as well, so you can see that.
Okay.
So here's the beautiful thing. So far, we've talked about the importance of having that signature story. That is the story that we're going to leverage so that we could build a connection, create some rapport, get our ideal customer client to say, wait a second here, I think she's talking to me. I think he's talking to me. It looks like they have an idea of the challenges that I'm dealing with. And it looks like maybe potentially this person can help me with the solution. And so we lead because that's how we get attention, and that's how we get them to understand that we do understand the challenges and some of the struggles that they're experiencing for themselves. We're hoping that at some point, we're going to eventually be able to have a sales conversation or an enrollment conversation. And during that conversation, we leverage our offer story because that's the story that gets them to see the value of what it is that we have to share. It's the story that we share that gets us to overcome their objections. And then it is also the story that we can leverage so that we can get people to take action. Now, here's the thing. I understand that so many of you, as you're listening in right now, you are also what we refer to as thought leaders. You've got some value that you're going to be giving to your customers, to your clients. As a matter of fact, one of my mentors told me a long time ago, say, Andy, whatever you do, don't chase the money. Chase the impact. Because he said, if you could get great at creating impact in the life of people, then the money and income would chase you. So in other words, what he was saying is that impact drives income. So that if you're a note taker, that's something you want to write down. The impact drives income. So as opposed to just chasing the money, you want to be chasing the impact. And part of the way that we're going to make impact is by creating value to other people. Now, in the process of creating value to other people, sometimes it gets really, really sort of like mundane and a little tiring when you're just sharing things in terms of facts and figures. And so we want what we have to share, the value that you have to share for your customers and your clients and for your prospects. We want it to be compelling. So if you're a speaker, if you're a coach, if you're an entrepreneur, and you create value for your community, you're probably doing that by some type of a presentation of some sort, and you're probably creating some type of value. And you could stick to just sharing facts and figures, but what we've come to realize is that if you really want to be engaging, if you want people to remember what you have to share, we want to find a way to take those facts and figures and we want to put them inside of a story. Those type of stories, the stories that helps our content to be more engaging, the stories that helps our content to resonate more with people, we refer to those stories as landing stories. Now, what do we mean by landing stories? Landing stories simply means this. What do we mean by landing stories? Landing stories are stories that we share that helps our content to land better on the audience. So that's what we mean by landing story. Landing story is a story that we share that helps our content to land better on our audience. Now, there's a friend of mine that he's a member of the National Speaker Association. And I love the way he puts this. He says that when we take our content, we put it within a story, it allows us to be able to do the 3 R's. Number one, when you share the story, it's going to help your content to be way more one of those things that people can remember, because we want people to remember what we have to share. And we want them also to remember our content and our value. Okay, so that's one of those things that's key. The other thing that is super important is it's likely going to be something that they're likely to repeat. You say something good, you put in a story, they're going to repeat it to other people. And those other people will be more people that you can bring into your tribe and more people who are potential prospects. And then the third thing that I love what John Watkins says is that they're also going to respond to it. They respond how? They respond by making a decision to be a part of your tribe. They respond by making a decision to maybe buy your products or your services. So I'm going to challenge you that when you are looking to share your content and when you're looking to share value, that you sort of deviate from just sharing facts and figures, and you find a way to put those facts and figures within the context of a story. And that's what we refer to as a landing story. It is a story that you share that helps your content to land better on your audience. That's one of the key things. It is a story that you share that helps your content to land better on your audience. That's what we refer to as a landing story. That's one of those things that's super important, super critical. And it's one of those things that if you want to gain some traction, if you want to be remembered, if you want people to respond to the things that you have to share, we want to find a way to put our stories within the context of a landing story, because that's one of those things that's critical and key so that we can make sure that we're keeping people hooked to the things that we actually have to share. It's one of those things that's super important, man. So, I was just thinking about this as I was sharing this, Shay, and I'm going to make sure too, I'm going to send something to you because I want to make sure we make it a little easy for the folks that do want to go ahead and get access to one of the free trainings that I have. But one of the things that we've covered so far, Shay, I want to make sure everyone's clear on this. We talked about the signature story. We're going to lead with that to build the connection. We talked about the offer story so that we can get people to see the value, overcome the objections with the things that we want to offer them so we can get more people to say yes. And then we talked about the landing story, because the landing story is the story that we share so that we can help our content to land better on the audience. absolutely be able to get them to be able to take action, man. It's one of those that's absolutely key. And what I think about though, Shay, is even as I'm sharing this, all of this is going to precede most of the sales conversation. All of this is going to precede the sales conversation, because everything that we're doing here is to be able to build a true, genuine connection with somebody so that they're even interested in actually having the sales conversation. And Shay, I'm just curious, what do you feel like is one of the biggest challenges or sort of like mistakes people make that is keeping them from being able to really convert those customers and clients that they really want to in a way that is going to feel good and congruent and not come off as pushy or salesy? What would you say is like one of the key things that's required,
Sure,
to really be able to pull that off, man?
One of the things that's key is really understand their signature selling styles, Andy. I'll bring it to me, and if you send it over to us, we'll make sure we get that slide or get that image up, or the images you want us to show. So we'll get that over to you, give you a minute to pull that and send that to us. But for those of folks that listen, the biggest thing is that most folks don't know their own signature selling style. And what makes them come across as pushy or arm twisted or sometimes maybe just manipulative when they're not intending to do that is they have never been taught their own signature selling style because they've never really taken an assessment to learn how to sell based on their DNA, based on their personality, based on their experience, and based on their expertise. They've been told they have to sound and sell like someone else. And the reason of doing that, it doesn't feel comfortable in their gut. And the reason it doesn't feel comfortable in your gut, and this is me, I was working with a client, and they're like, Shay, it just don't feel good. And I said, well, you know what? If I was taught to have to sound like that script that they gave you to read, it wouldn't feel good in my gut either. If I was talking to someone and I knew I could help them, and I was trying to come up with the words while I was talking to them, and I wasn't sure where to go, and I was trying to be like the coaches I've seen or the videos I've watched, I wouldn't feel good. You know why I wouldn't feel good? The person said, why? And you know what I told them? I told them this, and you might want to jot this down. I said, people have a phony meter, and they can tell when you're being phony. And you don't have to be phony. One thing I like about everything Andy's teaching you, he's not teaching you to do anything that's not comfortable for you, and it's not you, right? And so people can tell when you're coming and being phony. And I know, and not when I got started, but after I'd worked with one coach for about 3 years, and I spent about $60,000, $70,000, and I sounded just like the person. And there's nothing wrong with that in the beginning. I mean, I was like a parrot. Like, I would almost laugh where they laughed. I know I'm embarrassed to tell you all that, but maybe you've had that. Maybe in church, right? When those folks are going through ministry, you're learning how to tell your story, or not tell your story, but how to communicate better. And you sound like the minister, or maybe you sound like the professor you were with. Or when I first started on these videos, I tried to sound like I was pretty cool. It wasn't really me. I was concerned. Why? Because I was in Toastmasters before. And I had to put all that to the side. And I had to say, how can I sell like me? And Andy, similar to Andy, went into the lab, and I said, let's create these signature selling styles. I'm going to give you 3 of them real quick. And there's 7, but I'm going to give you 3. And maybe as I talk about these 3, they may identify by you. And then one of them is the dominant one. And you might not know what that is. Don't worry, I'm going to give you a text number. You can text in. You can take the assessment and learn your signature selling style. You can learn your closing style. And you can learn buyers' profiles. And when you do that, it opens up another level. And this is just for those folks who are entrepreneurs or those folks that really want to be able to communicate. So let me just give you a couple real quick. The first one, I hope you can see that. The first one is really the intuitive selling style. In the intuitive selling style, and this might be you, so listen in carefully, they sell or move people to action based on intuition, right? So they're able to go with their intuition, and based on intuition, they may ask the person to move forward. Based on their intuition, they feel like this is the right time. They feel like they should work together, and it's all based on their intuition. Now, that's not how I sell. It doesn't work for me, but for some folks, that just works well. And maybe that's you. You don't even have to write anything down. You can just show up. And congratulations if that's you. Write down intuitive selling style. If that's you, just say that's me, right? Quietly to yourself. I can't hear you, but just that's me. You might be thinking, I don't know about that, Shay. Cool. Or maybe you're the scientist selling style. Now, in the scientist selling style, they move people to action based on facts and data. And that's true because if you've been talking to someone and they had to back up with 100% certainty exactly what they're telling you. And if that's you and you're selling, you've got to make sure you have all the facts and right. You're going to have data to support it. You'll be able to prove your case. And there's nothing wrong with that. None of these are wrong, by the way, right? When you all have a predominant one and a secondary one. But for some folks, they're just more comfortable that way. And imagine if you are the scientist selling style, but someone's teaching you the language patterns of someone who's an intuitive. Would that feel good to you? No. It doesn't feel good at all, right? Because why would I teach a cat to bark when cats don't bark, right? You wouldn't want to learn a style that's not yours. Or maybe as you're listening, if you're the scientist selling style, raise your hand and say that's me. And I know I was working with someone who does insurance. They sell financial planning and insurance, and they thought they was the scientist selling style until they took the assessment because they had been taught to show exactly the forms and to show the documents the way their mentor was, and they were struggling. And they came along, and Andy said it so perfectly. They learned their origin story. And the origin story, as Andy said, is they were at a place where the person was, and they was able to create a breakthrough. And what style do we call that? That's called the rock star selling style. Now, the rock star signature selling style, this is someone that says, do what I do. I have done it, and so can you. I've got the formula. You think of a Tony Robbins, who he showed up early. You think of a Eric Thomas, he showed him up early. You think of a Lisa Nichols, he showed that picture earlier. These are individuals that says, we've cracked the code. We've got the methodology. Just do what I do. And they come from the heart. They're themselves. And they follow what Andy's talked about. Andy's broken it down. He's cracked the code. I'm cracking the code on the signature selling style. I'm going to give you one more, Andy, and I'm coming back over you, but I wanted to catch up to where you were real quick. So I want you to be sitting back and saying, man, am I the intuitive selling style? Am I the scientist selling style? I'm going to give you something you can take the assessment. Or am I the rock star selling style? I'll give you one more. All of them are good. But if you're someone who always is saying, I've done it, I've been there, look at me, look where I'm at, then in that moment in time, you're applying the signature selling style, or maybe you're the drill sergeant selling style. You're going to let folks know that you're going to guide them from where they are to where they want to get to, that they can follow you, that you're going to use willpower. They use willpower to move people to action. Follow this formula. Follow the system. You'll get there quicker. You'll get there faster. You'll get there with speed. Trust me. I am the leader. Now, this is not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're pushy. It doesn't mean your arm twisted. It doesn't mean you're manipulative. It's just what's most comfortable for you. And as you're listening right now, if that's you and you're like, you know what, Shay? That's me all day long. That's me all day long. I'm the signature selling style. And that's not my style. It's okay. You just want to know what stories to tell. Andy's going to help you with that. What landing stories they're going to work based on the buyer's profile, which I don't have time to get into right now. And then how can you wrap your origin story in there so that it is able to capture them, it is able to connect them. These aren't bad styles. These aren't good styles. Just like Myers-Briggs is not a good, bad, or indifferent. It's just a way of doing that. And the reason I tell you that, the reason I want you to know that, and I want you to have that is you might be thinking, I've got to take my signature test, Jay. I've got to know it. I don't know what it's been. It's been a while. Do me a favor. Just go over and text the word Playbook. For everyone who texts the word Playbook to 202-270-1662, not only will you receive the Evergreen Revenue Playbook, but I'll also make sure you get the quiz to take your signature selling style, which unless you've been in a conversation with me because it did not exist, we created it, then you may have never done this before. And this will no longer be you. You'll be more powerful. You'll be more persuasive. You have more influence when you know your signature selling style. So text the word Playbook right now and get your phone out to 202-270-1662. No Cash App needed. No Zelly needed. No swiping to see needed. You just show up. Andy, as we get there, I know you talked about 3 different signature selling styles. I know you have something they can connect with as well. Take a moment and tell them where do they go from here, man?
Yeah, man. So, let's cover this for a moment. We talked about the signature story. We talked about the offer story. We talked about the landing story. And I want to just leave you with two other stories that are really important. And then I'll remind you, because I know some of you were trying to figure out a little earlier, where do you go for, to basically get the free training I have so you can locate your signature story. And we'll make sure we'll put that up on the screen. And Shay, I shot you an email, so you should be able to have something fresh to what we'll put up for them.
Yep,
But
I'm
the next story
ready.
I want to
I'm
talk to
ready
you about,
whenever you are.
okay, the next story that I want to talk to you about is what we refer to as the value proposition story. The value proposition story. And this story is simply a story that we leverage so that we could get our ideal customer and client to buy into big idea. Now, why is this so important? What happens is oftentimes there's a lot of us, we get an opportunity, maybe we're gonna talk about our products, we're gonna talk about our services, and in the process of products and talking about our services, one of the things that maybe perhaps some of us have struggled with in the past is being 15, 20 minutes into talking to people about something only to realize that you didn't quite hook them yet. Like they haven't quite bought into what it is that you have to share with them. And so a value proposition story is simply a story that you share so that you could get your ideal customer and client to buy into your big idea. Now, whatever that big idea is for you. So in my case, my big idea is if you knew what stories to tell and how to tell those stories, you would ultimately show up with more clarity, more confidence, and therefore get more customers. Part of Shay's big idea is helping you understand that you don't have to be overwhelmed by sales, that you can partially outsource that sales process. And sales doesn't have to be this intimidating process. And ultimately, you could have support in the sales process so that you could drive sales up. What is your big idea? I want you to think about whatever your big idea is. Maybe you're trying to get people to understand if they change their lifestyle, if they went more natural, that they would have more energy, more fulfillment. Maybe your big idea is that, if people sort of made a pivot and a change, that they could live life on purpose. The value proposition story, it allows you to tell a story that gets people to buy into your big idea early on before you spend 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes trying to convince them that what you have to share is important. So for me, oftentimes when I'm going to do a presentation, I'll kick off my presentation sharing a story that talks about the importance of telling a story. You get that? So I'll kick off a presentation, maybe telling a story. And sometimes I'll start off telling a story about me getting my very first car. And it ends up being a simple story about, me getting my very first vehicle, but how I had to tell a story to be able to influence the decision maker to hire me for a job. And my whole purpose of telling that story is so that when my audience is listening, getting them to realize that if it wasn't for me telling a story, I would have never gotten that job that I so badly needed so I could be able to drive my very first car. And so we refer to that as a value proposition story. It's nothing more than a story to get someone to buy into your big idea. So if you were a realtor per se, it might be a story that you share about maybe helping a client who attempted to sell their house for sale by owner, and how as a result of them trying to sell their house for sale by owner, they were frustrated. They wasted time listing their property on the market because they never got any serious offers. People were knocking on their door at godforsaken hours at the evening because they had a for sale by owner sign in front of their door. And they wasted 3, maybe 4 months trying to put their property on the market for sale by owner until they finally decided to list their property with you. And as a result of listing their property with you, they were able to sell the property in less than 30 days. They got multiple offers and they got $20,000 higher than their asking price. The whole reason why you would share that story is so that you could get somebody to say, maybe it would be smarter for me to go ahead and list this property. Okay, maybe it would be smarter for me to go ahead and list this property with a realtor as opposed to sharing this property and listing it on my own. Okay, so that's what we refer to as a value proposition story. And so the final kind of story, which is really important, is what we refer to as an expert story. An expert story. This is important. Why? Because one of the things that we've come to realize is that the person who is going to get the highest dollar amount in the marketplace is the expert. And here's something I tell people all the time. People will walk by a generalist to go stand in line to speak to the expert. I'm going to say that again. People will walk by a generalist to go stand in a long line to speak to an expert. And the reason why they would do that is because we understand that at the end of the day, the expert is the person that people want to hire, and the expert is the person that is going to require the biggest dollar amount in the marketplace. So the expert story is a story that you share that, as opposed to you telling somebody that you're the expert, it's a story that you share that as they listen to the story, they come to the conclusion themselves that you are the expert. And of course, why would you want to do that? Because you're going to be first of mind if you could position yourself as the expert. And not only that, you're going to require a higher dollar amount if you position yourself as the expert. And it is far more persuasive if you tell a story and people come to the conclusion themselves that you're the expert, as opposed to you telling people that you are the expert. So, Shay, there's two things that I would love to do, because I know some of the people who are hearing a little earlier, because I shared 5 different stories. But at the end of the day, people ask me all the time, Andy, what is the story that I should start off with? So the 5 stories that I share with you is: you need a signature story, you need an offer story, you need a landing story, you need a value proposition story, you need an expert story. But people ask me all the time, Andy, what is the story that I need to start off with? And I'm going to tell you hands down that the story you're going to start off with is the signature story. Why? Because the reality of it is people don't even care about your offer if they don't first feel a connection to you. Let's face it, people love to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. If you didn't get their attention, if you didn't speak to their pain points, if you didn't get them to understand why they even need your products and services, it doesn't even matter. And the signature story is what allows you to do that. They don't really care very much about your content until they first feel a connection with you, right? And so that signature story is where we're going to start off with. And I know that every single time I talk about a signature story, people fall in 2 buckets. They either say, Andy, I've got a lot of stories and I have no idea which one is my signature story. Or they're like, Andy, I've had a pretty good life. I've never had any real major setbacks and challenges, and I'm really not quite sure which story should be the story that I should tell. And if you're that person, the way that you're going to identify your story is what we refer to as my story finder method. And I want to go ahead and put this up on the screen. And Shay, this will be the actual one that has your name. It should say Shay on there, just your name. And the story finder method is a very simple training that is going to help you to identify what I refer to as your signature story. All right. And I refer to this as my story finder method. And so I want to go ahead and put that up for you real quickly. You'll see it on the screen. It is how to find your signature story training. It is storyfindermethod.com. Storyfindermethod.com. So that should make it really easy for you. Storyfindermethod.com. And that's going to give you access to a very quick training. And in that training, it's going to help you identify which of your many stories is your story. So refer to that as your story finder method, storyfindermethod.com. Shay, let me know if you're able to find that.
No, I got it. Just 1 second. We had some freeze here, but no worries. It'll be up in about 30 seconds. You should see it.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
You're doing a countdown. Make it easy for folks. There you go.
There it is, right there. So for some of you, if you were just trying just a little bit earlier, so this, just to let you know, the story finder method, the benefit of had it on the screen. I think it went away real quick, Shay.
Okay.
But the Story Finder method is basically going to help you to identify your signature story. So I've got a really awesome, simple, quick training that's going to help you to identify what your signature story is, walk you through a simple framework to help you to identify what your signature story is. You're going to love it. Super quick, easy training. And all you're going to do is head over to storyfindermethod.com. Storyfindermethod.com. So that's the first thing that I want to go ahead and give you access to. Now, the other thing is, and I don't want to spend any time getting into it, but I want to make it easy for you because Shay shared this with you a little earlier to help you to find your signature sales style. But there are basically 5 different storytelling styles. And if you're curious, you're just curious because you're like, man, you know what, Andy, I want to know what my storytelling style is. I also want to go ahead and put that up. It's going to be super simple for you. You're going to text the word story to 954-278-3701. And what this is going to do is you're going to be able to take a really fast quiz. And on that quiz, it's going to help you to determine what your storytelling style is. There are basically 5 different storytelling styles. I am not going to go into because you could take the quiz. It's going to take you nothing more than a minute to a minute and a half to take the quiz. You're going to get a customized video from me telling you exactly what your storytelling style is. And then you're going to get access to a training that's going to help you to be able to identify what your story is. Okay, so really, really simple. You're going to text the word story to 954-278-3701. Once again, you're going to text the word story to 954-278-3701. And that's going to help you to be able to take the quiz so that you can figure out what your story style is. All right. So just want to make that really simple for you guys so that you could just get a little bit of idea. But one of the things I'm hoping that you're understanding, and this is something that Shay and I were talking about offline, is that there are 2 things that go hand in hand. The first thing is that your message. Let's face it. You're an entrepreneur, you're a speaker, you're a coach, you're an influencer, you're in direct sales, whatever it might be. First, you have to be able to get the attention of your ideal customer and client. You're going to do that through your messaging. You're going to do that through your story. Now, once you've gotten their attention and you have captured the lead, you then need to know how to be able to convert them. And that is where the sales takes place. And that's why, Shay and I are always having this conversation where these 2 things go hand in hand. You need to have a message. You need to have a story. And when I say message and story, they're interchangeable. We need to have something that gets the attention of your ideal customer and client, speaks to their pain point, and at least piques their curiosity as to why they should potentially want to leverage your products and services. But all too often, I see entrepreneurs get the attention of their ideal customer and client, maybe even capture the lead, but then they don't have the bandwidth or they don't feel comfortable with the sales process, which is why I am such a big fan of Shay Brown and his company, because they do such an amazing job of undergirding and supporting those entrepreneurs in that sales process, because they are able to support them by making sure that they have the sales tools, the sales process, and also the sales team to support them in that actual process, okay? Now, we shared a lot. I mean, a whole lot. Some of you might have had your head spinning just with us going back and forth. But I think if we needed to just simplify what we're saying during our time together, what we're just saying is this. If you're an entrepreneur, you're a speaker, you're a coach, you need a message. And the purpose of the message is so that you could get the attention of your ideal customer and client. And what we're hoping is you getting their attention is going to lead to you capturing leads. And once you capture those leads, you need to know what to do with those leads. And therefore, you need the support of a sales team. You need to have a process in place. You need to have tools in place. And you most certainly need a team in place. If you don't have those two things working for you, it is probably the reason why you're feeling frustrated and you're not necessarily growing and scaling your business. Or it is the reason why you're practically not even in business. And we might have taken a long route to get you there, but I'm hoping that that's what you sort of pull away from this moment. Like, wait a second, wow, I probably need to have a better message in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And then once I get that message, if I'm not too great at sales or I'm feeling overwhelmed by sales, I probably need to make sure I get some support in that sales area, because that's really what we're talking about, Shay, at the end of the day here. And I know we sort of like shared so much because we normally, if it's up to me and you, man, you and I would go ahead and talk to them for a couple of hours. But really,
there's so much to share.
They understand. I want to make sure that they understand, like, at the end of the day, what we're getting at.
Yeah.
You need to have a message to get people's attention and to capture leads. But then once you capture those leads, you need some support in being able to convert them into sales.
Yeah.
That's what it equates to at the end of the day.
And Andy, I think you summed it up best. I know we're coming down the home stretch, and you do need both. What I want to do over the next maybe 3 minutes, and then Andy, we got to bring this thing to a close. But you've given them 2 ways to connect with you. They can take the quiz, which was pretty cool, and then there was the method type, which is pretty cool as well. And Andy nobody doesn't do that. So there's 2 ways, and some of you need both. And I'm going to suggest you do both, okay? And if you haven't done it in a while, do it again, right? I just want to take just maybe about 2 or 3 minutes, and I just want to walk you through briefly so you at least have the last 2 or 3 signature styles so you have them for you. Some of you earlier said I'm not. Some of you, as we started off, said to yourself, okay, Shay, there were 7 signature selling styles, and we kind of started off with the first one, which was the intuitive signature selling style. And for some of you, that connected. You move people to action based on just where you're feeling. And then others of you move right into the scientist signature selling style and say, I need facts and data, right? So, they use facts and data to move people to action, which is pretty cool. And then others of you connected more with the rock star selling style. And that means you sell based on I have done it. You can do it as well. I've got the methodology. I've sat in your chair. I've been where you are. I get it. Trust the process. And then others sell more like the drill sergeant selling style. Follow me. You can do this. You're going to will people to take action. The last 3 that's want to share is the heart center selling style. It's my selling style, which means that you're going to sell based on emotion. There has to be a connection there. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. One's not better than the other. But in order for the sale to take place, in order for you to feel good, they've got to feel good. They've got to understand that this is all about how it's going to better them. Again, each of these have pluses. Each of these have minuses. Each of these have different styles. Just like life, right? There's high highs. There's low lows. There's summer, winter, spring, and fall. There's ups and there's downs. It's called life. It exists. But the heart center selling style for some of you, if that's you, say, that's me. I'm always pulling right here. That's me. It's okay. Maybe you're more than one, but one's dominant than the other. And then the next one I want to give you before I do that is there's a visionary selling style. Now, this is very important because they move people to action based on they see where they're going. Someone said you got to see it before you see it or you never see it, right? So they see where the client's going, and they help to paint that vision for the client. You think of President Barack Obama, number 44, right? He was kind of had that visionary, like, yes, we can, right? And you could see it, and folks could buy into the vision. I can go into a number of different folks, just pick someone locally, that allows you to reach that. And if that's you, and as you're talking to the client, and you're walking them where you see them, then yes, say, I'm the visionary. Now, you might be wondering, how do I talk to different buyer profiles? Conversation for another time. You might be wondering, well, how do I close based on my signature selling style? topic for another time, but just as a quick recap, we're talking about selling based on your DNA, based on your experience, based on your expertise. And if you've never taken a signature selling style and you're just out there doing the best you can, congratulations, you're a winner. You're a champion. You're doing well. But one thing I know about all successful people, they all have one common belief. Do you know what the one common belief is that they all have? Doesn't matter who they are. They have one common belief. And that belief is they can always get better. And as you're sitting here now and you're saying, wow, I need to know my stories. There's 5 different ones. I need to take this assessment. I need to find my story method. I need that, yes. And by the way, I never had my signature selling styles. It's not your fault. You may have never been in this conversation. Andy created it because it didn't exist. I created signature selling style because I was the original student. I would copy other people and try to say what they said. I'd hear how they talked. And I try to talk the way it was. I try to talk like most of the people he showed up there, except for the women. I try to talk like Jim Rohn. So maybe for things to change, you've got to change. I tried to do it all, and it took me a while to kind of say, no, this is who I am. This is the language pattern that works for me. I'm who I am. I talk fast, it's fine. I talk slow, it's fine. I need to be the best version of me that I can possibly be. And then the last one I want to share is the professor's selling style. Now, the professor's selling style, you're going to recognize some folks like this as well. They've got to teach you something first. Like, doesn't matter what conversation you're in, they're going to go into this teaching mode, and then based on the teaching mode, they're going to say, I just taught it to you. I can do more for you if you let me work with you. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just we all have our own styles. And maybe that's you. Maybe one of them is your teaching signature style. Maybe one of them is the other. It doesn't really matter. They all work. The reason I wanted to share that with you, the reason I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that is as you're sitting out there, don't want you to leave this conversation and tell yourself, you know what? It's time for me to change, and I don't know what to do. I need to do something different. Like, this is my moment. Some of you watching, this is your time. Some of you are ready to bet on you. And the good news is once you learn these stories that Andy's sharing with you, you can teach them to your team. It goes into your marketing. And then once you're having these communication with the client, you can use the signature selling style that works best for you and your team. So text the word playbook. For those that text the word playbook to 202-270-1662. Again, text the word playbook to 202-270-1662. Not only get your signature selling style, but you will also receive the playbook, which is the Evergreen Revenue Playbook, which is how you generate revenue one time. And then after that, your labor is no longer involved. Andy, as we come down the home stretch, I want to first acknowledge all the folks who are watching, all the folks who are tuned in, whether you're here live with us, which is really, really cool, or you're part of this broadcast. You ain't know he's part of the replay. It doesn't really matter. You're here now. It says a lot about you. And it says as you're watching, I'm going to turn over to Andy to have his closing comments, but it says as you're watching that you know that deep down you have the potential inside of you to perform at a much higher level. And not only do you know that, but just the fact you're here means you're willing to do something about it. The fact that you sent a text or sent a message means you're willing to take action. And I believe the universe rewards people who take action differently than those that don't. So I just want to acknowledge you. I want to tell you to continue down this road, that you can help so many more folks out there when you can have more. And I always believe this: sell more, you give more. When you sell more, you can give more. You can give more to yourself, give more to your family, and give more to the causes you believe in. With that being said, Andy, I turn over to you for your closing comments, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks for spending all this precious time, by the way. We thought it'd be a few minutes, and it's been a little longer, but we've given some value. We've helped some folks, and I believe we changed some lives. Over to you, my man.
Hey, man, I'll say this, Shay. You know, if you have been sort of following along with this conversation and you either are wanting to up-level your game or you're feeling a little frustrated, I'm hoping that you just sort of do what Shay talked about. Sometimes we got to slow down in order to speed up. And in the slowdown, you have to be saying to yourself, like, what's the message I'm putting out there? Like, you know, is my messaging, is the story that I am putting out there, is it the story that's getting the attention of the people that I actually want to work with? And for most of us, the reality of it is we haven't really put in the amount of thought that we should on working and crafting and developing our message and our story. And that's also one of those areas you don't want to do alone. You know, one of my mentors used to always say, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. You need someone who's on the outside that can help you to properly structure and craft that message and craft that story. I hope to be able to support you with that. But even if it's not me, make sure you find someone that can help you to do that. And then what happens is once you get your message dialed in and you're getting it in front of enough people, you're going to eventually have people reaching out to you and wanting to work with you. And the other place where we sort of drop the ball is really understanding and really doing that sales process and getting the support that we need. And once again, I believe Shay would say the same thing. You want to make sure you get the support there, preferably get the support from Shay and his team, but if not, get support someplace. But that's what I'm hoping that you really pulled away from this conversation is I need to dial in my messaging, my story, and I need to dial in my sales process and the support that I have there. And if you can merge those two, I think for you as an entrepreneur, that's where you start seeing the traction. That's where you're able to scale, because the messaging is what drives the leads. And then the sales process is what's going to help you to convert those into actual customers and into clients. And so I am really hoping that you take advantage of some of the free resources we gave. Once again, like if you're just trying to at least start off with that signature story and find out like, where do I go to at least figure out what that story is? Remember what I told you, it's just storyfindermethod.com, storyfindermethod.com. And it's just a really quick 3-part framework that I work with many of my high-end and clients to help them to identify what that right story is. And it'll be a great place for you to start so you get an idea of what that story is for you. And I'm just hoping that you'll be able to send us a message and say, hey, man, I listened in, man, you guys were sharing a lot. I got a bunch of notes, but I'm hoping that you decide to take some type of action on either, strengthening your message or strengthening your sales process, and preferably on both, because I believe if you legitimately do those things, you are going to grow and scale your business. Now, it is a process. We'll tell you that all day long, but I believe there's a process that you're going to be able to make happen. And so, but when you do those things, well, it really, really begins to lighten up the burden and allows you to not just feel burnt out and stressed as an entrepreneur, and start really putting your business in a place where it's a magnet, you're attracting those leads, and then it's a machine on the back end where when you find the right people, it's very easy for them to be able to make a decision to go ahead and work with you. So please make sure you follow up with us, send us some messages, let us know if you got some value from this time together. I appreciate you hanging out with us. Shay Brown, man, thank you so much for having me, man, and allowing me to hang out, my man.
Thanks a lot, man. We appreciate you. Thank you all for watching. You all are wonderful. Looking forward to connecting with you soon. Make it a great day, everyone, and we'll make some good things how we connect again next time. God bless. We wish you all success. We're out of here.